Hi there, everyone. My name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to another one of my album reviews. This one's going to be a little bit different. And the reason this one's going to be a little bit different is this one's a little bit of a different album. I'm going to be looking at Nightwish Human Nature. Okay, so let's start off with this. This is a double disc set, alright? I'm only looking at it on CD. I did not buy this album. My best friend, Andrew Kell, bought this album. He's into the power metal and the different variations of metal, all in those different stuff and whatnot. And my girlfriend Tracy is very much into that power metal and whatnot as well too, which is how I ended up doing, what was it, Sonata Arctica, I believe it was. So, and anything that I pull out that's going to be power metal or weird into the metal or stuff like that, usually it's going to come from one of them too. Now, with this particular album, I've listened to Nightwish before. I've had Nightwish within my CD collection before. Then I got divorced and I lost the Nightwish part of the collection, and I really didn't mind. I had a lot of issues with Nightwish because it all starts really sounding the same after a while from one album to the next or whatnot. So I got on board with Nightwish when they released Nemo and the album that came off of. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it was a decent album. I know the vocalist at that time had left, and I haven't paid enough attention to who's vocalist and who's in the band and who does what and who's, I'm sorry I don't. I enjoy Nightwish to a degree when it's on in the background typically, but not something I'm really into on my own. Part of the reason why is the vocals. I don't mind the vocals, but to me, it's too much like going to opera or going to Sarah Brightman, Phantom of the Opera. That's how I always think of Nightwish. I always think of Nightwish when I think of, like, say, Phantom of the Opera, and there are definitely elements of that do appear in here. And that's kind of the reason why Nightwish, to me, Nightwish is operatic metal, and I usually kind of avoid it a little bit for that reason. I do like when the male vocals kick in and it adds a little bit of a different dynamic to it, stuff like that. I like when they play around that way. But for the most part, not my style of female singing with my metal. I'm more hard rock, heavy-ish. I like, you're never gonna, beat Wilson from Heart, and you're never gonna Liz Hale nowadays, man. Oh my God, Liz Hale has just got like one of the greatest set of pipes going these days in rock and roll. Um, and if you Taylor Momsen as well, by all means, is wonderful too nowadays. Just those are more my style. This is less my style of vocals, so I do take that into consideration in here, which is why part of this album I enjoy listening to it, but part of it is kind of lost on me because I have a bad habit of tuning out at points while I'm listening to it. And this is most definitely a concept album with a story that runs the whole way through, okay? Um, and I'm going to get into that loosely as I go here. But I'm going to focus a lot more, in a way, on the music. Because of the way this album flows and the way it goes and the way I've been listening to it, I've been listening to it a lot while I'm outside working on my garden, doing work around the house right now, getting ready for spring, stuff like that. It's been in my mix. I mentioned Taylor Momsen and The Pretty Reckless. That was my recent review. And the new album they did, Death by Rock and Roll, and also Alice Cooper's Detroit Stories. I've been listening to all three of these albums together, kind of back to back to back to back, while I've been outside doing all this work and stuff like that. And I really like listening to the Nightwish album while I'm out there because a lot of it kind of goes sort of with it within the concept and whatnot. But let me get into the actual first disc here because the second disc is a whole different discussion and trip compared to the first disc. Now, the first disc is all regular Nightwish, doing regular, not regular Nightwish kind of stuff. I actually like the diversity on this album. The first song, music is very much Nightwish, but it's got a great singable chorus and whatnot. It's a great opening to the album. This is a song that very much reminds me of Phantom of the Opera, but the good parts of Phantom of the Opera, not the dreaded, boring parts of Phantom of the Opera. Sorry, not a fan of Phantom. But it's really good. Now, from there, we go into Noise, which kind of offsets that a little bit. And Noise is a little bit different. Noise is a lot more metally, a lot more harder, more noise. Oh, clever. Ooh. From there, it's a little more diving into the story I would get into, because now you're into the shoemaker. You know, it's telling the tale of the shoemaker and getting into their story. And Shoemaker is one of the first ones where I kind of get lost in it, because at this point it's been very kind of cliche Nightwishy. You know, it hasn't been anything too different or spectacular goes within it. There, but it's not bad. Um, but we get to Harvest. Harvest I really like, because Harvest is something different. Harvest, you really kind of hear that harvesty kind of sound to it. You know, you really hear that salt of the earth, getting into the digging, the planting, the harvesting, the celebrating. It's you know, both life and death all at the same time. It's a wonderful kind of vibe to the song, and the music, the whole vibe of it is a lot different compared to the rest. All of a sudden, you start feeling more less metal and more traditional global influences. I want to say, you know, at this point it starts getting a lot more Celtic-y sounding, or if not Celtic, you know, some ways I can definitely see there's like a light playful vibe, definitely very United Kingdom kind of British Isles kind of thing going on there, you know. And that continues going into Pan. Now, Pan and Shoemaker, I find, have a lot of similarities in the music itself, little nuances, little textures. And that is one thing with this album. It has a lot of familiarity from certain songs, from one song to the next, kind of, you know, while you're going through there, with continuing kind of themes like you would find in Pink Floyd's The Wall. So it kind of helps really kind of carry you along that way and keeps you going within the story musically. And if you're into the vocals and you know you're really paying attention, it really does provide a great diverse story already at this point as you go. As I said, it gets lost on me a little bit, and by the time we get to Pan, I'm not really paying attention to the lyrics much at all anymore, and I'm more really into the music. And the music here is, you know, if you're familiar with Pan at all, of Legend and whatnot, the playful little imp, uh, it's fun. It has that whimsy to it. It has that fun, that playfulness to it. You know, you can picture someone being led off into the woods by this little tiny imp with this little tiny flute and blah 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 blah. Okay, so it's really cute and it's fun that way, and I really do enjoy it that way. That goes into How's the Heart. How's the Heart is really kind of cool. Um, this is one of those songs that I really do, while it's going, really get into it. I'm really enjoying it. I really dig the vibe of it. It's really a good solid tune. When I'm sitting here looking at the track on the album and I'm trying to talk about the tune, it's like it's one of those songs that's in there. It's really good, but you don't really. It's a great album track, but that's all it'll really kind of ever be, is that kind of album track. Procession, solid tune to follow up. I don't really have much to add to Procession outside of that. It's a little sad, a little melancholy, maybe a little. It's procession-y. Then we go to Tribal. Tribal is another one where it's not your typical Nightwish, or not what I consider typical Nightwish, not the Nightwish I know. To be fair, my Nightwish is a lot of early Nightwish, not so much that middle to later Nightwish. So, and for me, Tribal is a nice, change from all of that as well. It's really cool that way. Then we get to Endlessness. Endlessness is a beautiful, beautiful end to this album. I absolutely am mesmerized by this song, and every time it comes on, I just totally let it take me away. It closes out the whole story. You can kind of get the idea of the flow just by the titles here, how it goes through. It's moving through life and whatnot. By the time you get to Endlessness, you really are kind of on that current being taken away. It's the end of the human life, but it's not the end of life itself. You know what I mean? Like, it's that outer body experience, that spiritual release, if you like. But it's just, there's something about it I just find absolutely beautiful, and I think it closes out this album perfectly. You couldn't find a better track to close out the first disc, I should say, the human part of the album. So now we get to the second disc, or the nature part of the album. Very first thing that has to be explained is this is just an orchestrated album here. Purely orchestrated music. This is not a heavy metal orchestra album. This is not, you're going to hear a bunch of wild ass guitar solos or anything like that mixed in here. You're not going to hear these great vocals over top of this great symphonic music to make it sound like it's true opera. No, this is pure symphonic music. The group that is labeled is, let's see here, the Pale Blue Orchestra. And it consists of woodwinds, brass, percussion, strings, and that is, according to this, that is that. Of course, it breaks down from there, and I'm not going to get into the full breakdown. It's not even 100% a full orchestra. Like, it's not a full-blown orchestra. There are one or two people handling multitudes of different instruments throughout here, or stuff like that. So it's not like there's 6 flutes or 7 clarinets, or the crowd that you always found in the high school bands. This is a full orchestra with just one person kind of per instrument sort of going on. And you get a nice vibe through here because of it. I love symphonic music. I absolutely adore symphonic music. I don't own a lot of it because I don't know necessarily what to pick up. There's some stuff out there that's really good. There's some stuff out there not so great. The other problem is a lot of it is older recordings. They haven't done newer recordings, or if you find a newer recording, it's maybe not as great as you might hope for, stuff like that. Bunch of different stuff. The point is it's complicated to find the right classical music to listen to and performed by the right orchestras. So when I listen to this, and it's an orchestra that was specifically used by the band to do this, it's wonderful, and I really thoroughly enjoy it. There are a total of 8 parts to this orchestrated piece. There's a little narration in the beginning. There's a little narration at the end. The idea is to set it up at the beginning, and the idea is to give it a nice closeout at the end. And that is it for vocals for the most part on here. Outside of that, we get into the following tracks. All the works of nature which adorn the world, which is broken, and it's track 10, but it's broken down into a bunch of different parts, right? Part 1 is Vista, Part 2 is the Blue, Part 3 is the Green, Part 4 is Moors. At this point, pardon me if I start pronouncing things wrong. Part 5 is Aurore, Part 6 is Quiet as the Snow. Part 7 is Anthropocene, including Hurry and Hymn of Nickel. And then part 8 is Ad Astra. Okay. So I love the symphony in here, and it's great when you're listening to it going through and whatnot. The thing is, there are parts where you really, because it's like the first disc, there's continuing themes throughout it, right? And because of continuing themes, you can get lost in here and you don't necessarily realize when it switched tracks and whatnot. And I've accidentally listened to it on shuffle a couple times, and because I've listened to it on shuffle a couple times, it kind of still flows in a shuffly pattern. So while you can definitely hear a definitive story going through it, listening to it properly, you don't necessarily have to listen to it properly, and you can definitely enjoy each individual track on its own. But there are certain tracks that sound like others, and there are some that definitely pop and stand out. The Moors, for example, definitely pops and stands out because it gets kind of heavy and hard going. A lot of the other tracks, they kind of blend within each other, and it's really hard. Like, even though on CD you can see, definite tracks, it is best to listen to it as a giant whole of all the works of nature which adorn the world. You get it a better feel that way. You can enjoy it much better, and it's definitely a giant symphonic presentation that way. So, well, you do have the individual parts which take you through the story. They're not necessary it's not necessary to know all those parts. What is necessary is to commit the time and effort to sit there and listen to it and purely enjoy the experience of what it is. I really can't push enough of how fantastic of an experience listening to the nature disc is. I really wish I still practiced a lot more of my knowledge or retained a lot more of my music theory when it comes to talking about stuff like the nature part of this album, because I used to know a lot more than I can remember now. Downside of getting a little older and focusing more just on the rock side of things and a little less on the classical things. The whole way around, if you are a Nightwish fan, you should definitely pick up this album. It really is. The first disc is a fantastic Nightwish album. And this is actually the first Nightwish album. I don't think I've done justice in this review for it. This is actually the first Nightwish album I've thoroughly enjoyed from beginning to end. No ifs, ands, or buts. A couple of the other albums, which I'm going to have to pop up pictures for because I don't remember the names of them here. I've had them in my collections, and there's been tracks on the albums I've enjoyed, one or two tracks here, one or two tracks there, but they have not been anywhere near as enjoyable as this album is on a whole. I will listen to this album as a whole, both discs, over and over again, and I guarantee I'll be borrowing this copy, if not buying my own copy, in the future, because I've really enjoyed listening to it, and I'm glad that I earned it, so I've got at least a digital copy to listen to. I don't know if this is going to be for your average listener. Okay? If you like power metal, yes, check it out. It's worth checking out. If you like classical music, it might be really worth checking out and listening to. I'm going to be honest. I do think that I have certain grandparents that would appreciate this album. Just because of some of the other music that they've listened to, I've heard them listen to. My dad's mom, I think, would totally love this album if I put it on for her, especially when I get to the second disc. Oh my God, she'd probably shit herself on the second disc. Most classical music I was ever exposed to was thanks to her. The first disc, when you're doing the whole, Phantom of the Opera or Andrew Lloyd Webber-esque kind of thing, my mom's mom, I think, would probably dig, because she was kind of into that stuff, That's where I listened to most of that Phantom of the Opera stuff. My mom, kind of a little bit into that stuff. She might dig this, I don't know. Not my dad's kind of music. Definitely not. Not something I would normally listen to on my own either. I'm not a huge power metal fan. But once again, this is a Nightwish album I would definitely listen to over and over again. And it is a Nightwish album that, I believe my buddy brought it into the house. It's been in the house at least a month now. And in that month, I have listened to it on average once every couple days. So, I've really kind of soaked myself into this album, and it's really, really a good album. And that's it. This is a great album. It's not singles. Music is a good, solid tune. It really is. I really enjoy it. How's the Heart, well, like I mentioned, is another one that I thought was really good. Harvest is another one I thought was really good. But none of them, I think, are true singles. They're not standouts, but they're not meant to be singles either. This is meant to be enjoyed as an album. So if you enjoy albums, go with it, folks. Anyways, I've rambled. I've gone on. I feel like I've covered it, but I haven't covered it. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. If you've listened to this, tell me what you think. It's going to be a long time, honestly, before I get back to Nightwish again. So, leave me your comments. Tell me what you think. Otherwise, peace, love, take care. Hit subscribe to get notifications. And until next time, just be good to each other, folks.